Hey folks, welcome to this podcast titled Narcissism and the Electric Eye. That was Confrontational opening us up with their song Stand Your Ground featuring Tony Kim. Link down below to it. They've got some good stuff if you're into the new wave. Now this video is inspired by Common Filth Radio episode 103 because he was discussing Jean-Luc Godard, a rather significant filmmaker, and he was exposing some of the dark history that I had absolutely no idea about. You can probably guess what sort of dark history we're talking about. Although if I'd ever seen a Godard film, it probably would have been absolutely obvious to me. This is why I do not like quote-unquote high art or literature, is because the modern examples of high art and literature are absolute garbage. And what he was talking about, he was just talking about the some of the details, but you know what? A whole bunch of stuff just clicked for me. And so this is what I want to talk about. I want to build off of what he was saying about Jean-Luc Godard, about the rampant pedophilia going on in so much of filmmaking. But before I get to that and start talking about the selfie culture, the Facebook culture, the modern narcissism, I want to talk about why people hate Common Filth so much, why he gets so much flack. And I want to make a confession. Because the reason people hate Common Filth is that he tears apart the pretty lies that we use to justify our own behavior. Okay, when he denounces sodomy, he is denouncing all of us, which is why so many people are eager to go up against him. And the reason I mention this is because one of the films that I'm going to be briefly mentioning is Videodrome from 1983. And I can't think of this film without thinking of how I first saw this film. It was a woman that introduced me to it. She was the woman that would eventually falsely accuse me of domestic violence. You know, and through her, through all of that, really opened up my eyes to just how broken and disgustingly evil the legal system is. It's what really blew my eyes open to just how deep the rot goes in feminism. Not just a few bad ideas, but a poisonous seed right from the get-go. And yet, when I look back at that woman, that relationship, and this is my confession, everything her and I did together was sodomy. So can I blame her? Can I blame the legal system for everything I went through? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. But you know what? None of it would have happened to me if I hadn't been disobeying God. Repent, sinners, because you will pay for it. And that's what people don't like about Common Filth, is that he doesn't give you a cheap out just because you're of the white race, or you're part of the alternative right, or what have you. Okay, because all of us, as I've said, everybody in prison is guilty of something. Maybe not what they were accused of, but they're guilty of something. I wasn't guilty of domestic violence. But yeah, I was guilty of sodomy and that unnatural relationship her and I had together. And I think I need to clarify this because of the autists out there. No, she did not have a feminine penis. She was a biological woman, but it was still an unnatural relationship. This is why you need to get right with God, is because if you don't, it is going to catch up with you eventually. Now that out of the way, on his podcast, Common Filth was talking about Jean-Luc Godard, and how this guy has an unnatural interest in prepubescent girls, and how this is running throughout his cinema. And there's so much of this that you'll see in so many other places. He mentions another one, a guy that is apparently, he has children, right? But he did an entire movie about bisexual teenage skateboarders. just sickening stuff. You know, like I thought it was just Salo, quite frankly. I knew that there are a few of these films that really ought to be considered child pornography. You know, and I'm not saying maybe a book shouldn't be, but when you get child actors into a movie like this, it is just absolutely sickening. It's one thing to write a book, for instance, about child prostitutes or children being abused. It's a whole other thing to film something with children being abused or prostituted or forcing them to get nude. Because that's that young actor or actress there. You're scarring them. And see, I've never watched anything by Jean-Luc Godard, but I am familiar with the name. And in fact, I'm familiar with one particular quote that stands out to me. The history of cinema is the history of men filming their girlfriends. And what's the first movie that Common Filth was reading about? Well, it's about a married man who can't get it up to have sex with his wife, and who both of them have inappropriate conversations, inappropriate nudist displays. Okay, not nudist, but sexualized nudity in front of their children on the screen. So the guy that says the history of cinema is the history of men filming their girlfriend is the man that can only get it up when he's looking through the lens of a camera. And you know, I was just watching Red Letter Media's review of the Blair Witch Project. And one of the interesting things they point out from the film, it's a quote I remember too, when I saw it back in the day, where the guy asks the girl, why do you still have the camera out? We're being hunted by the witch. And she says that the camera gives her comfort. It removes her one step from reality. Listen, you see the whole anime waifu phenomenon going on. You know, the cartoon pornography. And in some cases, it gets so exaggerated that some of these people, they don't even know what biological sex is anymore. They cannot commit a reproductive act. Actual human women with the scent to them, the natural human scent, with sweat, with hair, with real people, are offensive to them. You know, the lens takes you one level away. And the whole movie Videodrome. You know, maybe I should put this up for an Aurini's insight. You know, as much as I hate the movie, I hate it because that girl I was in the unnatural relationship with, she got turned on by it. So yes, that's her fault. It's also my fault for letting that into my life. But she got turned on by it. Because the movie is all about how the media is sexualizing graphic violence. How people are finding catharsis and religion through the television screen. How they are no longer attentive to the reality around them, but rather the only reality which matters is that on the screen, that which is displayed, that which is antiseptic, that which you are removed from. And so the protagonist winds up making love to a woman while on the screen an innocent person is being tortured to death. And you think about that old, almost certainly apocryphal, the claim about natives thinking that the video camera would steal their souls. See, I don't think the natives actually said that. Maybe they did, but I don't think they did. I think that was subconscious on our part. We, the inventors of the camera, saw our souls being removed by it. We are removed to one level. In fact, if you go back to the defining term of narcissism, comes from Narcissus, of course, of Greek myth, falling in love with his own reflection. Now, here's what's truly stupendous about that. We didn't have mirrors back then, not like we have today. Okay, back then, in Rome, during its heyday, they had polished bronze mirrors. They were reflective, but they were nothing like the mirrors we have today. Modern mirrors weren't invented until about 1500 or 1600, around there. Just silvered glass, where you actually get a perfect image of yourself. You had polished bronze. Okay, that's what women used to apply makeup back then. Men didn't use them at all. They were considered very effeminate. And yet, even this, before we have true mirrors, we have Narcissus, falling in love with his reflection in a stream of water. Which, just sounds absurd at the time. If you've ever seen your reflection in a body of water, you don't see very much. Okay, especially with a bright sky behind you, your face will be in shadow. There's very little that you can actually make out. And yet with this development over the time of the electronic eye, of the artificial eye, polished bronze, silvered glass, and now the video camera. This artificial eye creates a reality which is not true. The artificial eye creates a perfected reality, missing all the organic components that make up true humanity. We see this in the decline of cinema. Okay, because when cinema first began, when we first got the talkies, they were still imitating the novel, the written word. And so there are three major stages of cinema in our culture. The earliest stage, this is coming, 40s and 50s. This was the virtuous hero stage. This was where the hero, the protagonist of the film, was an everyman. He was just like your neighbor down the street. He was just like you. He was a regular guy with regular concerns put into extraordinary circumstances who through his own virtue managed to become a hero. Following this, and now we're moving up to the 70s, 80s, we started getting the aspirational hero. Think Arnold Schwarzenegger. Or Dirty Harry. Think these men they're bigger than life in a way. Right? Because Arnold Schwarzenegger, he is incredibly muscled, and he knows how to use every single gun. He's just a total badass. He's what we all aspire to be. Even if, we're not the biggest guy out there. Even if we've got astigmatism. Even if we don't have the perfect chiseled looks, we still aspire to be that. Something we reach towards, that we try and improve ourselves and build ourselves up, even though we can never reach that aspirational hero. And finally, the final degradation of the heroic form in media is what we're seeing in the present day. It's the iconic hero. That movie, Star Trek 2009. Why does Captain Kirk become the captain of the Enterprise? He becomes the captain because he's Captain Kirk. Why is it that Iron Man is the only guy in all of the world that can figure out how to build an Iron Man suit? Well, it's because he's Iron Man. Right? These heroes are heroes because they're magical. They're the narcissistic hero. You have no hope of becoming Iron Man. You have no hope of becoming Captain Kirk. Okay, this isn't the old Kirk that earned his way up to becoming captain of the Enterprise. The new Kirk just automatically gets promoted to that position because he's Kirk, even though there's plenty of other people on the ship that should have been in line for the chain of command before him. And this is not questioned. Nobody, if I even point this out, it sounds like I'm being pedantic, that I'm demanding too much realism from fantasy, because we are all so conditioned for this iconic hero. This hero with no depth, this hero which none of us can ever be. Our role is to sit in the audience and experience reality through that electronic eye. That electronic eye that has defined the ideal life as this fake and plastic form of masculinity. And this is just as antiseptic as Godard's women. When you see Godard's interest in prepubescent girls, the reason he has this interest is because adult women with adult hormones, who have a menstrual cycle, who have their own needs and desires, who are independent from him in a way that a child is not. Real flesh and blood, that terrifies him. His interest in prepubescence is that it has not manifested itself yet. It is antiseptic in his mind. It is safe. The only sort of sex he can deal with is the sex through the camera. And if it's sex involving somebody who is not sexually mature, all that much better. It's sex without the sex. It's the same thing with the anime waifu. Sex without sex. Antiseptic sexuality. And this is how so many people nowadays define their relationships through non-procreative acts. Once again, that's sex without sexuality. It's cummies. And so this electronic eye, it removes us from ourselves. Yes, it does. It does steal the soul. Except not that it captures it onto the celluloid. What it does is it locks you away from your own soul. Look at Facebook, because this is what we are now. We are the Facebook generation. The Instagram generation. That moment that you capture, that instantaneous moment you capture with the camera, and you post on Facebook, you make it your avatar, this becomes you. And the actual you, the imperfect you, the you who is a sinner, well, that's ignored. That your actual soul, which is stained, is ignored. And so we all want our Facebook avatars to be who we are. Okay, we all want to be that picture of excellence. And we want to forget all the history. We want to blame all the history on somebody else. Okay, and again, this is why I started off with this acknowledgement of that ex of mine. It certainly would be psychologically convenient if I could blame everything on her. I could say it's all her fault, it's the feminist fault, it's the justice system's fault, on and on and on. And deny any culpability, any involvement in any of it. Because then I could maintain my Facebook avatar as pristine, as perfect. The electric eye divorces us from our very nature. It divorces us from day-to-day life. These days, we're all putting on a performance. There's that one feminist writer, and she was writing about how excited she was to see her favorite male porn star, and then she had sex with him, and it felt very empty. It felt as if both of them were putting on a performance for a camera that wasn't even there. Sex and violence and artificial ego, all of these are separated out of ourselves. This antiseptic, narcissistic shell, this externally projected shell. And because this external self that we are so desperate to maintain, this self that we want others to see, this is also what makes us corrupt. This is what makes us easy to manipulate. Because nobody wants to admit their flaws. And of course, as Matt Forney has pointed out, hypocrisy is the final sin of a dying civilization. Because nobody cares about hypocrisy. Nobody actually cares about hypocrisy. It's a game of gotcha. Because when you catch somebody in hypocrisy, you're showing the disconnect between their Facebook avatar and their real self. And that's all it is. It's a gotcha. Yeah, and this keeps you in line. It keeps you pursuing that Facebook avatar. Okay, because what's people's reaction when they get caught in hypocrisy? It's usually to double down on whatever they were hypocritical about. Common Filth asked the question, and this was there's some article about a woman breastfeeding her boyfriend. I don't know the context. I read it a few weeks ago, but the article doesn't matter, okay? This was what it was about, but it could have been anything. He asked the question, rhetorically I should add, why do these people allow this to be reported? That girl, the one that pretends to be a baby, or that girl in Norway that thinks she's a cat. Why do these people, when they get contacted by the journalist saying, hey, can we do a story about you? Why are they so eager to say yes? Because of the electric eye. The desire is just to validate your existence by being on the electric eye. Because that's all that matters. Okay, your real life, your friends, your environment, your dog, none of that matters. The electric eye is all that matters. And so this reality TV, you see these people that are just falling apart psychologically on reality television. The reason their lives are an entire mess. Listen, you know that those Maury shows where they have all these people, I can't control my daughter, or, I don't know who the baby daddy is, or whatever degeneracy that they are proclaiming. Half of the reason those people did those things was to get on that show in the first place. That's the true motivation, is to be in front of the electric eye in whatever capacity you can create. There's something very worrisome about it all, isn't there? And it's the pattern. You can just see this thread running through all of it. The electric eye. The electric eye is what enabled commercials, modern marketing techniques. Go right back to the beginning. Go to the very beginning of Bernays' theory. And what does he do? Tells the tobacco companies, listen, I can double your market share by convincing women to smoke. I'm going to give all these suffragettes, cigarettes, and at a predetermined part of the march, when we have newspaper cameras and everything, they're going to pull them out and light them up and call them freedom torches. And what happens? So there's this big march, and there's only going to be some people are at the march. Right? Very few people are actually there hearing the slogans. No. What happens is there's a photograph. The electric eye captures the women when they're lighting up the cigarettes, and boom, this is now the symbol of freedom. And thus we get all of marketing. Marketing telling you that you are inadequate because you don't have their product. You're not cool, you're not popular, whatever. But if you buy their product, all of that will be fixed. Narcissism and the electric eye. Literature. Real literature, not the garbage that they try and get you to read in high school, killing your love of reading. Real literature comes from the mind of one person, but it must connect to you through true human norms and lines of emotionally it needs to connect. Painting is the true artists out there are those that are able to capture emotions through the visual medium, who are able to say a profound statement about humanity by capturing that. But see, the electric eye is more perfect. It's more perfect than any painting. And yet it's also utterly false. And all of us are now slaves to it. It's not just the electric eye of the government you gotta worry about. It's the electric eye in your own home. It's the electric eye you wield yourself. It denies reality and promotes an impossible mythology. The problem with cinema is that it's nothing but men filming their own girlfriends. Deus Volt, Aurini out.